Hey folks, you know I take my trail camera intel pretty seriously. It's a huge part of how I build my hunting strategy, and I'm always looking for gear that just flat out works, stuff I can rely on, backed by solid people and the best customer support in the business. That's exactly why I run Tactacam Reveal cell cameras. Whether you're just getting started or you're a full-blown data junkie like me, they've got a camera to fit your budget and your hunting style. My go-to currently is the Reveal 3.0 series with fully integrated GPS. These things are dead simple to set up. Less fiddling, more scouting and hunting. And they run on most major service providers and will automatically connect you to the strongest signal in your area. So no more hiking to the top of a ridge just to realize you've got the wrong service provider. Been there, not fun. Here's the kicker. You don't even need an SD card. That means fewer trips in, less pressure on your spots, and more real-time intel sent straight to your phone. And if you pair it with a Reveal solar panel or a lithium cartridge, you can keep those cameras running longer and spend more time doing what actually matters. Scouting new ground, dialing in a setup, or maybe, just maybe, finally cleaning the garage like you told your wife you would before the season started. Don't just take my word for it. Check out Tactacam Reveal at tactacam.com. Tactacam. Everything you need to take your hunting to the next level. Stay more comfortable, more concealed, and in the stand longer with Oscio gear. Premium camouflage apparel created for bow hunters by bow hunters. Oscio's revolutionary patented camo patterns and innovative features are designed to keep whitetail bow hunters totally invisible and dead quiet. Elevate your game with Oscio. Visit asiogear.com and take 20% off your purchase with code TRUTH20. You know, when it comes to mobile hunting, weight and efficiency matter. And that's why for years I've trusted Tethered, the industry leader in saddle hunting gear. Like always, this year they've taken it up a notch with their new whitetail frame pack and the hybrid or the minimalist bino harness. And if you're looking for their most comfortable saddle they've ever built, meet the all-new Carnivore 2P. If you're like me and spend long hours in season scouting, hiking miles, and pulling those all-day sits, you got to check out Tethered's gear. I spent over 30 days this October and November chasing a particular buck. Long hikes, long sits. And Tethered system kept me dialed in. My kit, the Ultralock saddle, 1-Sticks, Predator CFX platform, and the Fast Pack. If you're serious about staying mobile and staying quiet and hunting smarter, check out everything they've got at tethered.com. Tethered, made for saddle hunters by saddle hunters. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Tactacam Reveal Cellular Cameras. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 430. Today I'm joined by my buddy Aaron Hepler to talk about following a hunting dog to make you a better hunter. So stay tuned. All right. What is up, everyone? Happy Wednesday to you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you are feeling fine as we're sitting here. It is March finally. I think it's officially scooping season. A lot of folks I see out trying to scoop up some sheds. I'll end up going out here in the next probably week or two, do some scouting, try to find some sheds. Probably won't find any sheds. My track record will probably stay intact. Actually, if my track record stays intact, I'll probably find one. That's usually every year I manage to stumble onto one, and it's not for looking. It just happens to be usually where I'm walking and I almost step on it or whatever the case is. And that's usually how I find the lone shed that I find every year. But with that, did a little bit of bow shooting this week, got my new bow, stoked on that, built 1-0 arrow this past weekend. Playing around with like what spine I'm going to shoot. I kind of want to shoot a shorter arrow this year a little bit than maybe I was shooting out of the traditional bow last year. And just for ease of in the tree and not getting caught up on things and stuff like that. And so playing around with point weights and insert weights and stuff like that to try to find the right setup for me. So still kind of working on that. It's a work in progress. But, you know, the cool thing about getting this bow, you know, or I guess the unintended consequences is that I get to do a little bit of tinkering, which I always kind of like to do. And so I'm tinkering with arrows and setups and stuff like that. But this bow is a straight shooter. It's actually flinging the arrows that I had for my previous traditional bow. It shoots those fine. Like they seem to be set up pretty well for it. They're not 100% dialed, but even without them being 100% dialed for that bow, I'm more accurate, more consistent than I've been in ever since I started shooting a traditional bow seriously this time last year. So just way more consistent with this bow. Working on my shot process just a little bit. That's a little bit of a foreshadowing. Have a an episode next week coming out with Joel Turner from Shot IQ. And we talk a little bit about, closed loop, open loop shooting and how to kind of control your shot. And so he gave me some pointers. And so I'm kind of using some of those lately. And literally the next morning after he and I did the podcast, and then I went out and started shooting the next day using what he had explained to me, and made a difference right off the rip. Noticeable difference that I could absolutely tell. So super cool. So looking forward to that'll come out next week. But before we jump into today's show, I have a couple pieces of housekeeping to do with you guys. I want to make mention of a couple things. You probably heard in the intro, there's a new title sponsor on board of the podcast. And I also have an additional relationship to make mention with Hawk Optics. So just want to give you guys a brief explanation. I like to be transparent with everything and how everything kind of shakes out. And so, as you guys know, for a long time, I had worked with Chad and all the guys from Exodus for years. If you hadn't listened to their podcast at the end of the year, and if you have, you certainly know. But if you haven't, you probably heard through the grapevine that they basically closed the doors on the business for a bunch of different reasons, and I won't go into those, but they do an explanation podcast if you want to check that out on their channel. And so with that, a lot of the things that we were doing in the past, we didn't do last year. And so last year there wasn't, I didn't have a business or a podcast business relationship with the guys from Exodus. They were still, great friends of mine, still are great friends of mine. And so, rather than just kind of run out and try to find something to fill the space last year, it's not really my MO. And so I just kind of left it dormant, and, was hopeful those guys would rebound, and take the year, to figure out, the things that they were trying to work through. And then, look to see what the future would look like after that. Just didn't work out that way. And so last year I had the opportunity to kind of, play around with some different tools, cameras, explore some friends' cameras, the things that they were using. Was hunting some areas last year that have some challenges with reception, whether it's, one service provider versus another service provider and stuff like that. And an opportunity came up to work with the guys from Tacticam Reveal, the cell cameras. And there's two fellows, that work on building that, or that are working on building that team and that brand. Two guys that I know from previous kind of discussions or previous brands or companies. So Kevin and Greg have led the charge on a significant brand in the past, and I knew those guys from that time. Two stand-up dudes, and Greg was kind of the first one on at Tacticam, kind of charged with building the brand, and Kevin came along and is charged with building out their community. And I just have a lot of respect for those two guys building good brands, good products, and thinking about their customers and thinking about their people first. And so when the opportunity came up for me to work with them, it was kind of a no-brainer. I'm a trail camera nerd. I love trail camera data. I love using it as a component to building my hunting strategy and also helping me just kind of sharpen my woodsmanship. I think it's kind of how we should be using trail cameras. And so looking forward to that partnership with those guys. As you guys know, the folks that I work with, typically it's their long-term relationships. And so looking forward to that with these guys as well. And then with Hawk Optics, it was one of those things that just kind of came up. So Cameron, you guys know him. You had him on the show recently. He was from Exodus, and then he moved on to Hawk Optics. And so whenever he made that move, we were just kind of chatting about, the opportunities, working together again. Cameron's an awesome guy. He's one of my favorite people to spend time with. One of my favorite people, I don't hunt with a lot of people. I hunted with him on a trip, I guess 2 years ago. And he's just a real good dude, and was looking for an opportunity to try to stay connected with good people. And I think that's one of the main things for me is that when you find good people, wherever they might kind of go, you want to try to stay connected to them as much as possible. Because finding good people in general that you jive with, that you get along with, that you have respect for one another, and that do things the right way and do the right thing, then you want to stay as close to those people for as long as you possibly can. And so an opportunity to work with Hawk Optics came up. And so we're partnering with those folks, and then also looking forward to that, being a long-term relationship there as well. So, with that, you guys have done a great job of supporting other folks that I've, been working with for years, like the Tethereds and the Osios and things of that nature. And so I hope you guys, take some time to check out Tacticam, you can head over to tacticam.com and check those guys out, and check out Hawk Optics. That's hawkoptics.com. You can check those guys out there. Hawk is also in some retailers as well, so you can check those guys out if they're in like one of the stores that are near you guys or one of their dealers, and check out all that information on their website. But I hope you guys support them as well as you guys have supported all the other partners that I've brought onto the show, and then looking forward to an awesome 2025. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's show. Have a cool show for you guys today. Have my buddy Aaron Hepler on. Aaron, you know him, you love him. He's been on the show in the past. He lives close by to me. Oddly enough, we don't get enough time to spend a lot of time together during the hunting season or during the off season for whatever reason. We usually try to make some time to do some scouting, some shed hunting. So this year, I think we're going to try to make a little time to maybe do a little fishing on the lake by his house this year. But what we talk about a lot, in this session, of course, we talk hunting, and he had I guess it was an interesting hunt for sure. But he had kind of not a rebirth, it's too strong of a word, or it's too strong of a phrase, but a reintroduction to kind of hunting camp for him last year that he hadn't done in a long time. And so he had an opportunity to do that late in the season last year, and he had a blast, and it kind of reframed a little bit of what he's looking for in hunts and in that time of year. And then he also, in this past year, had gotten a hunting dog. His previous dog was old, and she unfortunately passed away. And so he got a pup, has been training it to, hunt quail, woodcock, basically be a bird dog. And he's teaching it now currently how to find sheds. He's doing a pretty decent job. But for being as young as Rue is, I think Rue is the dog's name, doing a killer job actually pointing on birds and getting some birds up for Aaron and being able to fill some limits with some birds. And so one of the things we talked about was just, when you're working with a brand new dog and kind of watching the dog learn, the things that you pick up, not just from areas you're walking through that you may not walk through otherwise, like when you're scouting for deer or whatever, but kind of, stumbling onto some of those, hidden little gems because the dog is kind of taking you there. But more importantly, maybe more importantly for hunting purposes, learning and watching how that dog is working and how it's cutting the wind. And because the dog wants to keep the wind in its face to, point where, a pheasant might be or whatever the case is. And so watching how like a wind in its face versus it trying to work to get a crosswind and things of that nature, really kind of is teaching Aaron a lot about how he thinks about the wind in some of these areas and how he thinks about access. And so, Aaron's just one of those guys that's just always learning. He's always evolving, always adapting. That's why I love having him on, and that's why he's one of my good friends. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into today's show. As always, thank you all for listening. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from a Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I got my good buddy on. You guys know him, you love him. He's been on a bunch. He's like my brother from another mother, but he's got hair now. Mr. Aaron Hepler. What's going on, dude?
How are you, buddy? It's good to
man.
see
He's
you.
fresh back from Turkey getting those Turkish hair plugs.
Yeah. Can't make them up, man. I mean, there's at least 10 of them now,
Right. Right. You look good, man. You look good with a nice coif of hair. A little boy band look you got going on, hitting
it's
your
like Ben Affleck,
Okay. All right. I'll go with Ben Affleck. Is it Batman? Was Ben Affleck ever Batman?
No.
He wasn't?
It is 100% Rafe.
Rafe?
Pearl Harbor.
Nice. Your new nickname, Rafe. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Dude, I don't know that you've ever had hair since I've known you, to be honest.
No, I think I've been bald the entire time.
Yeah. And truthfully, I know we were kind of joking. Your brother was like, since when do you have hair?
Yeah.
And I honestly didn't know. I thought that I was like, oh, maybe he just keeps it cut really short because it's like, going away. And he's just like, you know what, I'm going to embrace it and rock it out. But dude,
I mean, it is receding,
Oh, dude, look,
it
man,
is.
All of us kind of got a little bit of that going on. You know 100%. What I mean?
Yeah.
I feel fortunate that I've retained as much as I have to this point. It's like, it does okay. Cause I've wanted to shave my head. Because I used to whenever I was growing up, and then when I was in the band, I had super long hair. But like growing up, especially when I wrestled and stuff, it's like I always had a shaved head, just because I didn't like the hair in my way and whatever. And so now that I grapple a ton, I'm always like, man, I should just shave my head. Just like go with it, just shave it, be done with it. And Megan does not. She says I don't have a head that's shaped proportionally to have a shaved head. Like I'm one of those people who should not have a shaved head, is what she says.
How does she know? She never saw it.
Well, she did when we were growing up, whenever I'd shave it for wrestling. And she's like,
Okay.
it's got like this big lump on the back, like egg-shaped thing going on or whatever. But I would really like to shave it. And then I said it to some of my buddies at the gym, and both of them, of which are losing theirs, right? And so they now shave theirs just out of like, dude, if I don't, it just looks like I'm holding on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they were like, dude, do not shave your head. They were like, you have, you've kept your hair this long. He was like, dude, you cut it once. You don't know if it's going to come back the same. Like,
Yeah. Well, I have a buddy that I work with that does jujitsu, or he did. He was pretty serious about it before he came a nurse. Now he has 3 kids and stuff, but he grows his hair really long. He's got like a thick, full head of hair. But I used to shave my head all the time. So he was like, well, he's like, sometime I think I'm going to do it. You want to do it for me? I was like, yeah, I'll shave your head. And then one day we just got in some mood. I don't remember what we were doing. He's like, let's shave my head right now. So we're in a room in the ICU, and I took one of the trimmers that we use to like trim people's balls when they're going for like a cardiac cath. And I was shaving his head with I mean, we obviously changed the
Right,
razor. He's like,
right,
the supposed
right.
to put on there shaving his head with a ball trimmer.
that's hilarious, dude. Oh, man. It would just make life so much easier for me if I could do that. Because it's not that I have long hair and it's not manageable. It's just one less thing to mess with. Whatever.
Yeah, you don't
People are
got to
listening
go
to
for a
this-
haircut. You don't got to pay $40 to get your haircut.
Yeah, dude,
whatever,
because even just getting like a simple haircut, it's like, you know,
$20,
I go to a
yeah.
place that's not super expensive, you know, but they do give me a glass of bourbon when I sit down in the chair. So that's kind of nice, you know.
I go to Great Clips.
Yeah, nice. I go to a place called, shameless plug for those guys, give them a shout out because my boy Eddie there takes care of me. It's called Handsome Devils in Doylestown is where I go.
It's accurate, yeah.
So it's like a barber. It's like a punk rock and roll barber because it's all like decked out in like punk rock attire and like Halloween looking stuff. And
Yeah.
they got a bar there so you can walk in and get like I usually get like a whatever their Woodford Reserve or whatever they got, on the rocks or whatever, and drink that while I'm getting my hair cut. And my boy Eddie shapes me up, makes me look good. But I'm like, it's always, it's like I got to figure out what time on a Saturday I can get there, and then I got to schedule around it. It's just inconvenient. And it's just so much more convenient if I could just put the Flowbee on Flowbee mode and like Flowbee my hair and be done with it.
Yeah.
Dating myself there with the Flowbee on TV. People are listening to this podcast right now going, what the hell is happening? This is supposed to be hunting. We're talking about getting haircuts.
Hey, if now I can't remember his name, Josh Prophet is listening, he'll appreciate it.
He will. Yeah. He's a barber. Yeah. So he will appreciate that's right. Shout out to him for, barbering up. I might have to get me a cut from him one of these days. Got to make it down to his neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And get
have you
shaped
watched
up.
Ted Lasso?
No. Well, my wife loves it. I can't get into it for whatever reason.
I loved it. But you have to watch. There's a part where there's one guy that gives like a really good haircut, and they can only get a haircut from him like once a year. And it's like the guys are like, oh, every time he does like one swipe with the buzzer, and like, oh.
Right.
It's
nice.
You got to watch that part. It's hilarious.
Yeah. That comedy I just can't get into. I've been watching this show Outlander right now, which I did because it's like set in Scotland and there's some killing going on. So it's good. But man, we haven't talked we kept in touch like throughout the season and stuff like that, and we always do, try to as much as we can. It's never enough, right? We always feel like we're behind and stuff like that. But we would chat what we were seeing once in a while and stuff like that, man. But for your season, well, let me back up for a second because we're kind of firmly entrenched now, like in the postseason, right? And I don't know about you. I think we've talked about this before, just like privately, but this is probably I hesitate to say favorite time of year because I love to hunt, but like I really, really like this time of year. Like
I love it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like being able to spend the time out in the woods, which I haven't had a chance to do yet. I'm chomping at the bit, but without any real like game plan, if you will, right? You're just kind of exploring. You're just kind of playing, And like there's this approach to things that's, it's well documented because they implement it now in like sports and stuff like that because kids learn best when they play, That's how they pick up things most quickly, and that's how they apply things most quickly. If you just make games out of stuff and they can play games around it.
Yeah.
You'll see people do that in sports. I know that we do that at the gym for jiu-jitsu. Like we game things where like coach will make games out of stuff where you're trying to achieve certain goals and you pick up skills really quickly that way. I almost feel the same way about this time of year because there's no pressure. And I know a lot of times if we're scouting a specific area, if we're out doing something specific, like we'll kind of have a plan, you or I will, like we want to get to these areas or we want to kind of look for this or whatever.
Yep.
But by and large, we're just kind of going out and just seeing what we see, and playing. And I feel like whenever you go into things like with that approach, like you pick up so much that you maybe overlook otherwise if you have tunnel vision. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much you can look around in the woods right now too. Like, everybody's everybody's looking at the different articles on shed hunting versus scouting and that you should do them separately. But I think, where you and I are at is just taking a more wholesome picture of the woods. Like if I find a shed, great. And there might be a time where it is shed focus time because there's definitely one in here or whatever. And you can't get that tunnel vision or it's just not as fun.
Yeah. And that I think is the biggest things. Like this time of year has just become really fun for me, where it's nice and cold out. So it's not hot. It's not buggy, right? I can see everything. There's no stress. There's no pressure.
Yeah. Oh, I broke a twig. You don't got to worry about it.
Yeah. I'm making noise. It doesn't matter. Typically I'll have my dog with me, which makes it kind of fun.
So fun.
But we'll get to some scouting stuff. So how did last season kind of, how would you rate your season last year?
Oh man, I actually think that this was probably one of the most fun seasons I've had. And I was actually just talking to my buddy on the way home about this. I think I've built the most memorable moments in hunting in the last 7 years of hunting, 6-7 years. And I think every year I'm just like, oh, that was the best year ever. After like, mental breakdowns and pep talks from my buddy Clint here. But I mean, we all have them, right? But
yeah, for sure.
This really was a fantastic year, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I got my 14-year-old lab died last February right after the Sportsman show. And, we got 2 new puppies and one of them was a bird dog. So I was excited to get him in the woods. And, I got an invite up to a rifle camp in like North Country, like everybody talks about the Northwest PA, going up north. I got an invite to go out there with my buddy Rich. I don't remember if you met Rich or not, but
I think I did.
Yeah, I think he was at the show when you were there. I can't remember, but you've probably met him before at some point. But Rich Yoder, so he's like, oh yeah, you got to come up with this at camp. He's been asking me for years, and I finally was like, yeah, I took off, let's go, And my archery season was good. I saw a lot of deer, saw some bucks, had some good encounters. I missed a really good 8-pointer, and I was bummed about it. I would have doubled with my buddy that I was hunting with that day, but it's kind of like, you know what? I'm not going to let it get me down. I'm having a good time. I made a mistake. It's whatever. It happens a lot, but it happens. And I was just really excited to give something new a try. So I spent a lot of time bird hunting with my little pup, and he just turned a year January 25th. So he was still really green. So it was really cool to see him just like progress through that and stuff. So I did a lot of bird hunting, and it was fun because I used to love that as a kid, just, pheasant hunting. I never really did a lot of grouse and woodcock, but we got into a little bit of woodcock a couple times, and I probably pheasant hunted and bird hunted just as much as I deer hunted this year.
Wow. That's awesome.
And it was just so much fun. And in part, it was kind of connected to, we went on that quail hunt with the Cumberland Estates last year, and Kyle, I've kind of been touching. Kyle gives me bird dog tips, our guide that was there and stuff.
Dude, his dogs were on point, dude.
Yeah, he's a good guy, and he's like, oh yeah, you got to do this and you got to try this, and it was great to see that. So I kind of got a little fire lit for that. So I had a lot of fun doing that, a lot of fun archery hunting. I probably, I don't know, I had 12 somewhere between 12 and 15 archery sits. And I think I bird hunted just as many days. Usually I'd go out deer hunting in the morning and I'd get home around noon and then take the dog out until my girls got home from school or something like that. And then spent the evenings with them most days. But, I got up into this North Country for our deer hunt, and like the week before it was like waiting for Christmas, man. I was like, I can't wait. And then there was snow coming. I was like, oh boy, I'm going to get to rifle hunt for the first time ever. Not rifle hunt for the first time ever in the snow, but on the opening day. Like, how often do we have snow in Pennsylvania on the opening day of gun season, especially in this corner of PA? It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I was really excited to do that. And we got up there. Everybody's like, oh, we're going to go here tomorrow. And this is the plan. And Rich had killed a really good buck in this area that we were going. For a story, we were going to go to where he killed a buck on this really hard beach edge, like a old cut that's just like a wall of beach on the one side. And, we started seeing some tracks, and I'm kind of like, okay, well, is this kind of like where I go with Clint? Like, okay, there's like a couple tracks here, and that's really good sign for this area. Or is it like, well, I'll see a little bit more. Right. And Rich was like, this looks pretty good for this area. I think we're gonna do pretty good this morning. We did not see a deer. It was like, I don't even know. It was like 10 degrees out. It was really cold.
Dude, that weekend was weekend. Well, I guess the opener is on the weekend. I didn't get out till the Monday. Like I skipped the weekend and hunted Monday, Tuesday, so I could maybe get rid of some of the. Because I was bow hunting still, so I was trying to get rid of some of the, gun hunters if I could, not get rid of, but just like hopefully have a little bit less pressure to deal with or whatever, but yeah, it was stupid cold.
I think it was 20, but had a feel of like 15 or 16 because it was pretty windy in the morning. So we were like, he had doe tags, I had doe tags and a buck tag. I was one of like 3 people in the camp that had a buck tag. So he killed a nice buck in like the first week of the special regs in 5C. And he's like, yeah, we might as well just sit like right next to each other so we know kind of what's going on or whatever. So we went in together and, sat pretty close, and it got around to like 10:30, and he's like, what do you want to do, man? Like, the closest shot to us was like a mile away. I'm like, well, let's just sit till 11 and we'll get down. We'll go back to the house for lunch. He's like, all right. So I think we were both kind of happy because we were ready to get out of the windy saddle thing going on, and we're like, nothing's happening. So we got down, we went back to the house, and we kind of regrouped, and he's like, I don't know, I guess we can go back to where we were, or, we can try this other area. And they had pictures of great bucks that were there, 2 weeks beforehand. They had checked cameras or whatever. And our one buddy, Judd, he's like, oh, let's go out to this. There's this good ridge here that has this new cut on it that we were in last year. Like, shot a couple, the camp shot a couple bucks in there before. Let's just go there and see what's going on. We made it. We got to the parking lot. There's like 3 trucks there. Opening day of rifle. It's like 1:00 in the afternoon. And I'm like, well, this looks pretty good. So we get 100 yards, 150 yards down the road, and these 2 doe come ripping. They're coming ripping out of this like thicket, and we all pull up, get ready, and the one just tears across, and the other one stops. Like, oh, should I do it? And she comes running out, and me and Judd are kind of like, oh, and Rich just dropped like 50 yards, perfect shot, drops the doe over, and we're all like, what? All right, it's gonna be a good night. So. Right. We ended up, I don't think Rich got a shot that night, but he ended up seeing 15 or 20 deer and a couple of small bucks, and Judd ended up seeing a really nice 8-pointer, and, he shot a doe, and I ended up missing a doe that night. And so we drug some deer out, and we went back to camp, had a good time. We're like, we got to go back in there in the morning. And the way we split it was when we went out this road on top of this ridge. One dropped off the one side, I dropped off to the right. And Judd dropped off to the left. Rich went out to the end, and everybody saw something. So we're like, well, between the three of us, we already saw 30 deer, but this side where Judd went, all the bucks happened to be. Neither of them had buck tags, so I'm gonna go in there, and then at some point they were gonna kind of walk around the ridge to me. So we all, went our separate ways again in the morning, and I was sitting it's kind of like rolling, where we go in the north. It's not really like a 1,000-foot gain or anything like that. Real kind of rolling stuff in these real wide bottoms, beautiful looking terrain. And I ended up sitting kind of like halfway up the hill just so I could kind of see over some stuff in the bottom, because it was kind of a mess and, messy in the bottom, a lot of deadfall and whatever. And I was sitting next to a dead log and just watching the snow fall and just, man, taking it in. Saw a couple deer, a couple does in the bottom. And I ended up moving down the ridge a little bit and just reset up. And just, man, I was just kind of like contemplating everything. And at some point I'm like, you know what, even if I don't kill a buck, this has been just with this like camp camaraderie. I used to do that like on a farm. We had a little bit of a thing going on, but it wasn't like a stay overnight and take, kind of thing. So just kind of getting back to that, that experience was just so cool. And I was just kind of like, just enjoying myself, just sitting there, and you're like, okay, we've got like an hour and a half, and we're all going to kind of still hunt one way, and then I'm going to stop at a point, and they're going to kind of walk this other part and, bump stuff around, and then we're all going to still hunt out a certain direction. And at some point, I think it was like 8:40ish, 8:45 in the morning. I'm like, well, that was a good run for a second morning. All right. That's all right. And next thing you know, I like look over and I see a doe bust out of this cut that I'm sitting. The cut is above me on the hill, and I'm watching over this bottom, and I see this doe bust out of the cut, and she's not like ripping running. She's just kind of like trotting. Now a little buck is behind her, like a little 6-pointer. And then I realized some terrain feature kept me from seeing the buck that was in front of them. So a nicer buck is out in front of this small one and this doe. I was going to shoot the small one. He's a little 6 or 7-pointer. I'm like, oh, well, that one's better. I still thought it was probably like, he's probably like, I don't know, a 90-inch, 80-inch 8-pointer. I'm going to shoot it because I'm up here just having a good time. And he got to like 70 yards, and I stopped him in the bottom and shot, and he ran like a bat like he was not hit. Like, oh no. So I go to get ready to put another one in. Like 2 in a row. Right. So I go to I'm like, oh, and I get up and he just falls over, and I'm like, yeah. I was screaming, and some guy across the valley, like almost a mile away, is like, good job.
That's awesome. That's great, man. It's great. And dude, I was stoked for you when I got the text message, for sure. Oh
man, it was so cool. And I walked down to that deer, and he was like better than I thought he was. He's not huge. He's like 110.8, but he's like really heavy antlers, and his bases were 5 inches almost. And just heavy antlers and a real tight spread. So it was cool. And the guys were all
that's a great PA buck though, man.
Yeah, it was so fun. 110 inches, but so worth it. So fun.
Yeah, but I like the fact that I asked you how your season was, and the first thing you said was, I had a lot of great memorable moments.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's, I don't know if maybe it's because as you get, more experience, or you've been doing this longer or whatever, you start to measure the value of your season maybe a little bit differently. I know I did this year,
Yeah.
I had a great season. Like I loved, in hindsight, I loved every moment of it. Didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, but I wouldn't trade, the time that I spent for anything.
Yeah.
I had a blast. And like, it's funny that you mentioned like the deer camp kind of component of the things, because I had the same thing growing up where we had a stay overnight place. Now, my dad and I didn't often stay overnight because it was just literally a mile down the road to my uncle's place, and they had this camp that you'd go to my uncle's house, you'd make a left at his driveway, and like we live out in the middle of nowhere, and you drive this farm access road along the edge of the cornfield down into this hollow and up this ridge, and then back in there was a camp. And what it was an old like travel trailer type thing, like RV type thing, that had a wooden cabin built into the door off of it that was like a living room.
Yeah.
So like the RV was like where the beds were, you know, it was like a pool behind trailer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was like 2 sets of bunk beds and like a kitchen, like dinette table, right? And then the wooden part of the cabin that was built up against it was like where the wood stove was, and like there wasn't really any TV, but there was a TV with rabbit ears there, a couple chairs, and that was, you know, that was hunting camp. And it was called Camp Boudico.
Yeah.
Because, and I don't even know why, there was a pond that was there that was just like an old farm pond they called Boudico Pond. And I have no clue how it got its name to this day. You know, my uncle Randy, he sometimes mispronounces things. So my gut instinct is that it's actually called something else historically, but he always pronounced it Boudico, and so it just became Boudico. You know what I mean? Because like the side story to that is there was this guy named Theodore, Uncle Theodore, I think was like that's what my Uncle Randy called him, Uncle Theodore. But like I never knew his name was Theodore, because anytime my Uncle Randy would refer to him, his name was Thitter. And so I always just grew up knowing the man is Thitter. And so I don't remember, I was probably in my 30s. And so I said Thitter. And like my stepmom and my dad started laughing, and they were like, and they were just surprised that I remembered that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They thought I was saying it because I knew my uncle mispronounced the guy's name all of his life.
Nope.
And I was like, what's so funny? And they're like, you know, that's not his name, right? I'm like, no, that's Uncle Thitter. And they're like, no, his name is Theodore. And I'm like, why did Uncle Randy call him Thitter all of his life? He's like, because he couldn't pronounce Theodore. So I only ever knew the man as Thitter all my life, you know,
That's
which is
funny.
Hilarious. So Boudico may not actually be Boudico. It could be something completely different. And I just don't know the difference because it was just pronounced wrong, like for all my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were always good times, man. It's, you know, I don't get a whole lot of that anymore. It's like what I've realized is, I think academically, I like the idea of hunting camp.
Yeah.
I can't do it though. Like I'm much more of a like to be alone like person when I hunt, for the most part, right? Like Chad and I will travel together some, you know, but that's pretty much it. You know what I mean? It's like, otherwise it's like I go solo.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm sometimes can be not, if someone's not as like focused as I am, and this is just the way I am about everything, like whether it's hunting or jiu-jitsu or the podcast or whatever, right? I have a hard time playing with others.
Yeah.
You know, where it's like, if they're not like thinking the same way I am, and not that they have to think the same way, but like approach it the same way of like, you know, it's not fun time. It's like, I'm here to do something time.
Yeah.
Then I can be not a fun person to be around. And I know that. Right. And so therefore I just like, I try to just be by myself as much as I can during those times, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, there's a lot of different aspects. 'Cause actually I was talking about this with Rich the other day. He's like, I love to hunt with or around other people, but I like to take hunting seriously. Like hunting is not really like a party time for me. Like we're not at deer camp. Like, yeah, well, we have a drink or two at night or whatever, sure. But I'm not there to have a hangover the next day. I'm not there to I'm there to kill a deer. I'm there to hunt. And I want to like come back to that camp vibe. And I mean, in a sense, like the whole hunting season's camp, right? Like, I'll
Hmm.
call you after an evening hunt, be like, "Yo, how was your day? You see anything today? I know you were out. Like, what's going on?"
Hmm.
Like, that's camp too. It's different. It's different than going to stay at a camp, but it's part of um, what I want to create as a culture with my friends that I hunt with, or
Hmm.
acquaintances that I know, and that kind of thing. Because it is, like the story swapping and that kind of stuff is a lot of fun. Because you're right, like hunting is a very solo thing, right? Like for the
Hmm.
most part. If you're deer hunting, I don't really want to hunt with. Maybe I go with somebody or um, whatever, but like most of the time it's like split off. You go that way, I go that way, and I'll
Hmm.
talk to you in however long we're sitting that day, 6, 7, whatever hours it is.
Hmm.
And there are other types of hunting that aren't that way, right? Like bird hunting is not really. I mean, mostly I hunted by myself and my dog this year, and that was great.
Hmm.
But there are times where you go with 5, 6 guys and you chop it up and have a good time. There's
Yeah. See,
times
like
for
bird
all
hunting
that
and
kind of
stuff like that.
stuff.
Like I can definitely get down with
A
like
group.
hanging with a crew. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Um, and there's different types of like elk hunting for whatever reason. Like I can get down with it because it's you kind of hunt in pairs for the most part. Like when you
Sure.
when you
You
elk
almost
hunt a lot
have
of
to.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so I can get down with that. But for whitetail, it's like I just feel like I'm I'm better suited to be alone, and
Yeah.
people are probably happier not being around me.
I don't know. You're pretty
Yeah,
cute. I don't know.
yeah, right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh,
And that's why Chad and I work well together.
yeah.
Because and I've told this story a million times, but it's like we didn't know how we were going to jive when we first tried to hunt together. It could have been a
Yeah.
catastrophe.
Yeah.
Um, but we both just happened to come back. What did you see? Cool. What did you see? Cool. Eat. Go to bed.
Yeah.
Like there was never any like, "Oh, we're gonna stay up and shoot the shit, or we're gonna stay up and have a drink." There was never any of that. It was always just like, "I'm going to bed," and
Yeah.
hey, me too, and so that's kind of why we've always kind of worked, is that we're happy to kind of be together when that little 30-minute window is there
Mm-hmm.
to swap some intel, right?
Yep.
And then we're just as happy to be completely alone, you know, outside of that,
Yeah. And I think it goes for
So,
the same thing. Like when we've scouted together,
hmm.
you take it serious. I think it's important to, like, it's not, there's different parts, right? Maybe you want to get somebody new into it, and that's a different level, and you have to let go of some of your, like, yo, don't slam the car door for, like, just take it easy on the
Right.
person.
Yeah.
But then there's a time where it's like, okay, this is for me, and if I'm with somebody, it better be serious. Like, I'm here to hunt.
Right.
And there's a difference between, a traditional PA rifle camp versus an archery hunt
For
too, right?
sure. Yeah. Like rifle camp I could do because you know, um, because I honestly just this is just my own personal opinion. It's like I really don't care if I kill something with my gun or not. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like that's just my point of view. Archery is different, where it's like that's my thing,
Yeah,
and so
exactly.
I'm trying to perform as best I can. I guess is one way to kind of put it. Um, and I think the other thing that I learned too along the way is I do better when I actually just talked with Jace Allen about this a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
I forgot he even said it because he said it like a previous podcast that he and I had done together. But because he kind of said he feels the same way. Like he's not a whole lot of fun to be around, and he, as much as he would like, because we both feel similarly about it. Where it's like as much as I would like to, as much as I want to be able to enjoy being around other people while I'm archery hunting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I for what I can't, right? Like
Yeah.
I won't let myself do that for whatever reason because I'm like either trying to pursue something I'm trying to do
Mm-hmm.
or I'm trying to figure something out,
Yeah.
right? And in the way he said it just made total sense where it's like if I have other people around me and we're bouncing ideas off of each other and stuff like that, if I don't achieve the goal I want to achieve or if I don't if I mess something up or whatever, it's like, there's a little thing in the back of your mind. It goes, did I mess up because I listened to so-and-so, or did I mess up because I messed it up? Right.
Yeah.
And the learning isn't as stark if it's not you. And that's partially why I like solo sports too. It's like I wrestled growing up and I like BJJ. It's like when I make a mistake in either of those sports, it's like, it's all mine to own. Right. And the only way that I get any better at it is I have to recognize what those are and I have to fill the holes. Right. And for me, hunting, like archery hunting kind of feels very, very similar to that.
Yeah,
I agree. Like I got to know that I made the mistake. That way I know what it is I need to fix.
Right.
Right. Because otherwise, I can trick myself into thinking that someone tricked me into all these things, like,
yeah, exactly.
Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, totally. And I think that's the difference is like, that's why we scout together. Okay. That's your time to bounce ideas.
Because that is the time. Yeah, that is the time where it's like I'm looking for like intel gathering, right?
Exactly.
I want to hear perspectives and opinions, and then I'll strip away what I either don't agree with or what I've disproved on my own or doesn't fit my style or whatever, and go with a plan. But like you're right, the intel gathering part, the more the merrier.
Yeah, and when you think about it, if you have 3 people in the woods and you're working a certain way, you all mark scrapes. Now you have a scrape line. You know what I mean? Like, you might be able to figure something out that way. And that's how you build the intel and how you have the remote camp, so to speak, when you're talking about archery. Like, hey, how'd it go with that buck today? You got anything going on with him? Yeah, sounds good, man. All right. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good hunt kind of thing. Yeah. Just like you said you did with Chad. The rifle thing is way different because it's almost, I mean, I can't tell you how many times we're walking. We got to follow, because it snowed, we got to follow tracks everywhere. So it was like perfect. It was a little crunchy, but mostly perfect for still hunting and walking around and being like, hey, I could see guys over here like a mile. They're kind of working this way. Looks like they're getting set up. We better be over here to catch any bumped stuff or things like that, And a couple times you're like, this is like hunting grouse, but we're hunting deer, and there's deer popping out everywhere. Between the 3 of us, we saw 70 in 3 days on public land in PA. Yeah. It's a lot of stuff.
There's no deer on public land in PA though. Dude.
There's no deer.
Didn't you hear that?
They were all button bucks.
Yeah.
Actually, it might have been foxes. I don't even know. But there's no predator hunting here either. We don't do that.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different vibe. It's like the appropriate time for it. And like I said, I think you do yourself favors by spending time alone in a tree and really, like you said, picking apart your own mistakes and your own things and making your own decisions, because it is important mentally too to do that stuff, because then the other stuff is a lot easier or feels easier, and it feels light and fun and just out here having a good time. I think the other thing is that we never let ourselves get bored. You know what I mean? Like you never just sit anywhere and just let your mind wander to things that it needs to take care of. You're just, oh, I got to go to work today. Oh, I got to make sure I get home to do this. And you're on the daily grind, and you never just sit to kind of process the things that happen in your life on a day-to-day basis, or, what happened at work yesterday, and not that you should be like, most of the time, if I'm in a tree stand, I'm probably thinking about deer, but there's some times where you're contemplating things like that. And it's good to let your mind be bored. It's good to not just be stimulated by the rat race, and that's a really good time to recharge the batteries.
Yeah, that was the one thing I was going to say when you said, let your mind be bored. It's such a good point, because, anytime you get bored for like a second, like people's natural reaction anymore is just like to pick this thing up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and scroll or, whatever it is, which is why we don't have like, you don't have as many original thoughts as you might, right? I was reading something about this. I remember if it was like a study or what it was, but they talked about like, where ideating comes from, and like ideas big or small, business ideas, new perspectives. Like a lot of that comes from when people are bored, like
Yeah.
when their mind is bored and they just have the space to think about things that they don't normally think about, you know? And we diminish that now by, all the engagement that we have on screens and stuff like that. And you're right. It used to be people had their best ideas on the shitter. Well, like, why was that? Well, it's the one place you got alone time, and you could be bored when you didn't have a phone. Now everybody just scrolls while they're, on the toilet, And so, the one thing, and it was weird because I recognized myself feeling this way whenever I was hunting this year, chasing that deer, because, that area doesn't have any cell service where I'm hunting. So it's like I would go in and I'm completely cut off, and the first day or two, it's like you almost don't know what to do. You know what I mean? And and that made me realize, it's like, God, man, I'm so conditioned to have something.
Isn't it crazy? You almost get anxious.
Yeah, it did make me anxious the first couple of days. And I eased into it, aside from looking at maps or whatever, because I'd look at maps while I was in the tree or whatever, because I'd have, my offline set up or whatever.
Yeah.
But, it took a couple of days and then I finally settled in, and it was just, you just think about, every now and then think about some crazy shit, you know what I mean? But it's fun, you can kind of get lost in it a little bit, and it's just it just felt good. And I kind of enjoy hunting places where you don't have that connectivity for that reason.
Yeah. And I agree with you. If you don't let your mind disconnect from everything else, you're not going to schedule a time to have a creative idea.
Right. Yeah.
It's not going to happen. You're not going to be like, all right, 8:30 to 9:30 is creative thinking time. The first thing you're going to do is reach for your phone to think of an idea.
Chat GPT. What Google, ideas are?
Yeah, exactly. You're not making any inventions
right
on Chat GPT. You know what I mean? It's not happening.
Right. And then you're also not thinking critically about the thing that you're currently doing either, right? Because there's critical thinking that kind of has to happen depending on what you're doing, right? If you're a person who just wants to be out in the woods and doesn't matter, then that's awesome, more power to you. Then you're achieving your goal. You know what I mean? Being out there is you've already won, but if you have something that you're trying to chase, or a deer you're trying to see, or types of deer you're trying to see, or see deer in a specific area, whatever it is, right? When you have that kind of boredom or whatever, it gives you opportunity to think about. Sometimes it's a blessing and a curse, right? It's the blessing is oh man, I have time to think about this, and I wonder if this deer is doing this, or maybe you see some deer and you're like, hey man, why'd they come out of this spot over there? I wonder what's over there, right? You start to kind of think about. The curse part of it is that sometimes you maybe overthink what you're seeing, right? And you give more credence to what you're seeing than should really be there,
Right. And that might actually benefit the hunter who's just oh, I'm just going into the woods.
I think it definitely benefits the new guy, the newer person, right? I think I can just speak from personal experience. I think I'm at a point that sometimes I've had to try to teach myself that less is more, a lot of times. And not knowing everything is actually knowing more than if I knew everything.
Yeah.
Because I think at least this has been my experience. I'd be curious about yours, but I feel like I hit a certain point of understanding that I'm cool. I got what I need to feel confident about enacting a plan and going and predicting, right? And because that's the name of the game, right? If you're hunting a specific deer, or you're hunting a group of deer or whatever, you're trying to predict where they're going to be next, right? I think when I get to a point where I've overloaded with information, I start to be reactive, right? And I start to kind of being where I think that they are going to be because they've already been there. Since they've already been there, they're probably not going to be there again. They're going to be somewhere else, right? And so I start reacting and following the data as opposed to anticipating the data, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I keep preaching this lately when I'm talking to people about this. It's bucks need three things in the fall, right? Food, security, does. That's it.
End of story.
And if we don't have the basics, you don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, all the information is great. Like we can talk about Dan Infalt and John Eberhart and hunting beds and hunting transition zones and a rut cruise line or a rut, we can talk about all that stuff. But if you don't know which direction the tracks are going, you got nothing.
Right.
And if you look at this scrape over here and think it's a turkey scratching or vice versa, it's not going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
So when you really dig into the basics, and even for me in scouting, like we want to look all that stuff, and it's good to be advanced too. Like, okay, well, like I didn't find the buck bed, so maybe down this point a little bit, you get to that terrain feature that, okay, here's the buck bed. This is, that's great. Fantastic. You have more information, pieces of the puzzle. Okay, maybe in your area, the bucks bed in a certain area consistently. Where you and I hunt, they don't. Like there's beds everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's some specific ones. We don't need to talk about that. But what happened about the sign you just walked past? Is it good?
Mm-hmm.
Is it not good? 2 days ago, I was out shed hunting, and I picked up a nice one. I was with the dog, picked up a nice shed, and I turned around and looked, and I could see my truck. I didn't, and there was a bed, right? A big bed, and a shed laying in a big bed. And there was like I could see the bed. If I went to my truck, I could probably see the deer from the truck, but there was actually probably not. Like mentally, I thought I could, but just the way he was laying, there was a pine tree and a couple of blowdowns that kind of just made like a little cave thing. And he was just right next to that,
Mm-hmm.
and should you walk past that? I mean, he's probably going to be a Pope deer next year.
Right.
I don't know if you should walk
Probably
past
should probably be a son of a bitch to kill too, because he could probably see you coming.
Oh, he can
It's why
see
that
every
bed's
car
there.
that comes in that parking lot.
Yeah.
So essentially, you either got to beat him back to the bed, or hunt way over here and hope he travels a mile in the evening or something.
Right. Or just like hope his exit trail is the opposite way of where you've, like from the parking lot, so he doesn't get spooked and come in and backdoor him on his exit trail.
Exactly.
Do something like that. But
now this isn't to toot my own horn and say I found this. Like I was like kind of astonished. Like
you might be the first. You might be the first person to ever use the word astonished on this podcast.
Perfect. My dulcet tone voice was astonished. Anyway, I was kind of like, really surprised that it was there. Like, you hear all the like, oh yeah, the parking lot, oh yeah, close to park,
overlooked spots. Yeah.
This is not overlooked. Like, there's deer poop everywhere, whatever, but it's probably getting walked past, I would assume, because you can, like I said, I can literally see every truck in the parking lot. Mm-hmm. I got to thinking, and it's like, that's pretty basic. A newbie would come in here and be like, oh, look, there's a deer bed, there's an antler. Oh, like,
X marks the spot.
There's a trail that goes up the ridge and some poop. Let's sit here. And that newbie would probably kill that deer.
Probably.
He'd probably roll in at 10:30. That deer's cruise through at noon. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But we continued to follow some of that basic sign to get to something that we thought was going to be more advanced. Mm-hmm. It ended up being not that way. But we found a little area that I'm like, there's some does bedding here. And this, doesn't look like anything superb, but and he was like, I got a camera, let's hang this camera. Mm-hmm. So he hung the camera. We hung it at like 1:00, and he started getting pictures at like 5:15 in the evening. He had like 17 pictures, does, a couple small bucks, nothing crazy, and a bobcat, like right off the bat. So it's like, oh, this basic stuff, it's not all that basic. Like,
yeah,
I mean, if somebody walks the same way to the refrigerator every day, they're eventually going to wear a line in the linoleum. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for deer.
Yeah. I always say, man, master the basics. Mm-hmm. If you can do just that, because most people who are great at something, there's not a lot of flash to their game, if you will. They're just really, really good at the fundamentals. Like, they just don't make a lot of mistakes. That's the first thing. It's like, I was listening to people talk about Bill Belichick, one of the best football coaches, to ever live, arguably. Mm-hmm. and I was listening to some of his players. I forget what it was like some interviews. I don't remember what I was watching, but they were talking about his approach, because I'm always interested in like how people game plan, because to me, strategy is strategy, whether it's strategy in business or strategy in hunting or strategy in football. It's like a lot of the same principles kind of apply across the board if like you elevate them to like a 10,000 foot view, right? Like the tactics are different because you're playing different games or different, sections, like whether it's business or football or whatever, right? But like the philosophies a lot of times translate, look, thumbs up, look at that, thumbs up. Didn't even have to pay extra for that. I literally have those things happen to me all the time on the podcast because I don't know how to shut them off on my computer. Like, I've not figured out how to do that. But anyway, and what they were talking about, Bill Belichick, and it might have been, I can't remember the guy's name. He was a wide receiver, Julian Edelman. I think it might have been him. Mm-hmm. And he said that every game plan basically that they would put together started with the same thing. Mm-hmm. And it was basically, I don't remember exactly like verbatim how he said it, but it was essentially, we're just not going to lose the game.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to not make mistakes. And if we just do that, our chances of winning the game are like 85%.
Right.
Right. And so that was basically that whole dynasty's philosophy, was just don't make mistakes. Just do your job and don't make any mistakes. And if you do that, you're going to win a lot of games, and the other team's likely going to make mistakes. Right. And I think it's the same way in bow hunting. Like if you just don't if you just don't educate the deer that you're there to start, right? If you don't make mistakes on your access, right? You don't make mistakes on playing your wind. You don't make mistakes on moving too much or, being loud, whatever the case is. Like there's those basic fundamentals. Just like whenever you're hunting with your dad when you're a kid, like shut up, sit down, be quiet. What I mean? It's like, don't move. You do those basic things, like you're probably going to be in pretty good shape, and then as far as like sign goes, it's like, to your point, it's like, can you identify like heavily used trails?
Yeah.
Right. Where deer want to be? Can you identify like a decent scrape area? Can you identify like an edge? Right. You just, those couple things, like probably be in pretty good shape. It's like, not a whole lot more is needed. And I see guys that have a ton of success, and it's like, and it's always them just doing the meat and potatoes really well.
Yeah. Remember that time we found that real pounded deer trail? And
where?
We were like, it was in that creek bottom behind that swamp at the, I don't want to say the name, but there was some water there and stuff.
Yep.
And we found that real pounded trail. We're like, where they all at?
Look out.
Mountain bikes.
Mountain bikes. Exactly.
We were like so pumped. We were like, oh man, there's like, there's going to be deer on this camera.
Dude, like we're going to see every deer on the planet. It's like, nope.
Not even one.
Not even one. I think we saw some bears. I think it was the only thing that we saw on that camera.
Yeah, there was bears everywhere. But the point is, you can't make mistakes. Like when you're ready to kill a deer, you'll know you're ready to kill a deer because you stop making mistakes. Mm-hmm. Not stop making mistakes, but you
stop screwing up the obvious things, the simple things.
And you're aware that you're going to make a mistake when you're about to do it. Before you do it, you're like, I don't know about that. You got that gut feeling.
Yeah.
The thing is when you're new, especially when you're new to this, is initially you're a little league player. You're not in the NFL. Mm-hmm. You don't know what the heck you're doing. It's time to learn. So make mistakes. Like go bust a buck.
Well, that's just it, dude. Like, I mean, I think that's the biggest. That's been my approach for like traveling out of state and learning on the fly. Is that I mean, I don't go in saying I want to screw this up as bad as I can. Like you don't go into it doing that. But you go into it, especially if you're going somewhere new. Like when I started going to like planes and stuff like that, like I knew I was going to make mistakes. So
you're a student.
Yeah. I was like, I'm not going to, I don't want to. I know some things academically of guys that I are really good at these scenarios, and I've talked to them and I've tried to pick their brain. And so I have an idea, but I've never tried to do it yet, And so it's like, I'm going to make mistakes. I can't get bent out of shape about it. It's part of the process, and I just got to be diligent about like when I do make the mistake, like learn the lesson and don't make it again,
Yeah.
or try not to make it again. Right.
Yeah.
And like, you're so right. You have to kind of be, and I think even as you like, if you've been hunting for a while, like I think it's sometimes valuable to go back to the basics, even then to kind of recalibrate,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes you can get, you can get too enamored with maybe the flashy stuff or the wow stuff, right? Because maybe it's worked for you once, right? And so now you're trying to like that to like that almost the wow thing becomes the answer to everything now, for you to a degree, right?
Yeah.
Whereas like sometimes you just need to recalibrate and go, you know what, I just need to go back to the basics, and be really, really good at those. Like you see that sometimes like, it would be the equivalent of like a pitcher who throws like a great fastball with movement and has just like a dirty breaking pitch, right?
Yeah.
That got him to the majors and got him paid and made him, a like all-star player, right? And then all of a sudden he adds like, a third pitch to his arsenal. That's not one of his best pitches, but like it got him a huge out in a big situation, right? So now all of a sudden, like that's his thing. Like he wants that to be his thing,
Yeah.
And then it gets him in trouble because, well, it's not really your best pitch. It just happened to, it was the right scenario and it was the right pitch, the right time, like, and it worked,
Yeah.
right? It's not what you should hang your hat on, right?
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes we get mesmerized by that a little bit about the thing that worked really, really well the one time. And then we think that's got to be our thing then, my thing then. It's like, well, no, like your thing is the other things that actually got you to that position to have that success. That pitch might have just been the thing that was the cherry on the top, but like your two best pitches are actually the reason why you're even there in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we could probably do so many analogies on this, but I mean, we were both, like, you think of it this way too, is we were both musicians at some point in time. And when you got up to play for a crowd of people, if you made a mistake, you didn't stop playing. No. You kept going. And then you're like, then your team lead, whatever, whoever's the lead singer or whatever is like, oh, what do you work? You played an F chord. That was supposed to be an E minor, like,
right.
What are you doing? Okay, yeah, I got to remedy that. And then what do you do when you're done? You go back to your room, you turn your amp on, and you just play that part over and over and over again until you get it right. And then you get it right again and again and again. Now you go up and you perform and you knock it out.
Yeah.
Scoodly, scoodly, scoodly. Scoodly.
Yeah.
But it's that same thing with deer hunting is like, you got to get a lot of reps in. And to be able to do that, this is the perfect time of year to start doing that because
that's exactly where I was going to go.
Scout. If you got 100 spots to hunt and they're all a reasonable amount of distance between each other, whatever that, it's all relative. So it can't, maybe it's a mile, maybe it's 100 yards, whatever that is. So you're not scaring deer out of that area. Like tomorrow, you don't have to hunt where you're hunting today and you get to go do it again.
Yeah.
And that's where you don't make your mistakes.
Yeah.
And the more reps you get in with that, and you keep pounding away at that deer, the easier it's going to be to figure it out. And when you figure out, especially when you figure out that first one, it's like you got it. Like,
yeah,
you'll be able to keep doing it after that.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that because that was kind of like where my mind was going, where going back to what we kind of started talking about, which was, this is the time of year to play, right?
Yep.
To, going back to the baseball analogy, right? It's the time to go back and figure out what your third pitch might be.
Yeah.
Right. Because fundamentals are the foundational things are the things that are actually going to provide you probably with 90% of your success, right? It's like, or whatever it is, like just making up a number, but like, I don't feel like that would be terribly wrong.
No.
But there are times where it's like, you got to have another off speed pitch. Cause maybe you're just like, I'm just like, man, I feel like I'm just not seeing something, right? Or not executing something or whatever the case is. And you got to have like one more little twist on things. And that's when that can be helpful. It's like where you can have that other off speed pitch to go, all right, cool. Everything I know to work, I'm doing, and it's getting me close. Now I got to, you know what? I'm going to try this because I saw this while I was scouting in the off season. I thought of like, man, maybe what if I did this? Like, well, that's a great time to do it. You know what I mean? Because it's like what you've done to this point has gotten you close and you're almost there. You're knocking at the door. Just can't get this deer killed. Or every time I see these bucks in this area, they're 60 yards away and I'm not quite close enough, but like, how do I get to there? Because I feel like my access is not going to be right for like, that's when you can kind of say, you know what, I'm going to take a little bit of a chance, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to take a little bit of a risk and I'm going to try something that I thought of in the off season or something that dawned on me. Or maybe I saw this access trail over here that maybe I can use that instead, right? It's like whatever the change is. Cause I think, you know, that was one thing I was caught like very mindful of this year as I was chasing that deer was I was trying to like, I was trying not to use this as often as I could. And I feel like in hindsight, at one point, I feel like he knew I was in the area.
Yeah.
And I was trying to change up how I was getting into places as often as I could. I was trying not to use the same exact, like there was a couple routes that I would use to get to a certain point. And then once I got to a certain point, I would try to change how I was getting to like my setups and stuff like that. Cause I was trying not to use the same, if I'm going to this setup over here, I don't want to walk this same route in all the time.
Right.
You know,
They'll
unless
figure
it
that
was
out right quick.
Yeah, unless it's a bulletproof kind of entrance and it's like, and the wind is undeniable and it's like, I have to use that. And maybe there's some other cover reasons why I can use it or whatever the case is. It's not going to disturb him. But toward the end, I felt like I was starting to get predictable a little bit, you know, and I didn't realize it until after the fact. And I was like, man, you know, I was like, I feel like after the end of October, I felt like I was predictable. I had also explored a lot of options to that point, you know, so I was probably just running out of options to a degree.
Yeah.
Because that when I should have probably killed him there at the end of October, I feel like that's whenever he probably realized like something was afoot.
Sure.
If you will, you know what I mean? Because I'd gotten close, you know, I feel like I got close I saw him the one time, but I got close. I feel like I was all around him, and I feel like he was just like, I don't know, man. Feels a little weird, you know?
Yeah, I've been there for sure on two different bucks where you're like, I remember that scenario, like, oh, I'm going to try something a little bit different and edging into a place. And I remember hearing a big deer coming through Laurel and just stop. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I know that's that buck. Mm-hmm. And he would not come out of that. And he just turned around and went the other way. Like just walked away. You know what I mean? Not like whoosh, blowing out of there like a big old mama doe. Nope. Big old coming in. And you could tell it was like you could hear like the leaves rustling around when he's putting his head side to side kind of thing. And like, you know, that's that probably that, you know, I mean, maybe not, but something was telling that deer, like, I know what's in here. You know what I mean? And shouldn't have caught my wind or anything really. Just like had that sixth sense kind of deal going on. But yeah, like we can get predictable because we're humans and we're pretty predictable, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, that, and it's easy too, you know, you've been grinding away however many days you've been hunting or whatever. And it's, you know, you're like, oh man, do I climb this hill and go a different route to change it up, you know, for surprise, right? Or do I walk this low piece in where I only have to make one climb? Like, you know, to get, like you start to negotiate with yourself a little bit.
Yeah, because you're about to get a butt whooping, you know?
Yeah. It's like, I'm going to go in here and
you're
sit
like,
and
I
not
just
see
want to
anything.
spend a night in a bed that doesn't smell like cheese beef, you know?
Yeah, dude, my whole fall was cheese beef, dude.
I know. You're in that trailer for like 31 days, man.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Something like that.
It was bad. It was
a
like,
lot.
It did not smell good in there. It was not. It was an assault to the on the senses, if you will.
Social generator's broken.
Yeah. Oh shit, man. So let's make a quick transition because we talked about your season a little bit. We were going to talk about scouting later, but we just kind of jumped right into it, which was good because it's been top of mind for me because I've been chomping at the bit and I was planning to get out this coming weekend for you and I. People who listen to this will be the weekend past, but but we're supposed like the area I want to go scout. They're still got some stuff on the ground, and it's all like iced up now and stuff like
Yeah.
that, which is kind of miserable, and you can't see the ground. And then there's it's supposed to be decent weather like on the weekend, except like the day that I can go, it's supposed to be like a wintry mix that day and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And I'm like, ah, geez. So that, and truthfully, I got my new bow, got my new longbow, and so
Yes.
I need to make my 0 arrow for that and do some arrow tinkering so I can.
Robin Hood.
Yeah, actually, I went out and shot it today, man. Right after I got it. Shout out to Steve at Bushman Bows, dude. Like, I knew it would be a nice bow. Not to change subject, we'll get back to stuff here in a second. But
Yeah, we got to talk about it for a minute at least.
I knew it would be a good bow. You know, everything I've heard from people who have shot his bows, people that I know who own 1 or 2 of his bows. So I had no doubt it would feel great. You know, the only traditional bows I've shot is the one my buddy Todd gave me, a longbow. That's what I kind of been shooting the past year.
Yeah.
And then I have, 2 recurves, because I've shot traditional bows like probably like 10 years ago. I started like tinkering with it, but it's like I never really shot them consistently. It was more of just like fun. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna pull out a recurve and shoot it for like a day or 2, and then I wouldn't shoot it for like a year or whatever, And they were just old ones my dad had that he gave me, right? So none of them shoot great. They're just mass produced.
Yeah.
The recurves are probably like it's a decent brand, but they're still just mass produced.
Yeah.
Dude, I got this thing and strung it up, went downstairs to my Target, my bag that's in the basement, and dude, just night and day difference in how it feels, how quick it is. Like, the thing is so light, it's stupid. It's only 52 inches. It's a 52-inch tactical longbow. And, I haven't made any arrows for it yet. So I was just literally shooting like the 0 arrow that I have for the longbow that I had been shooting. And I was like, I'll just shoot that into the bag. Felt great. And surprisingly, I was like, man, like, it's not tuned perfectly. The arrow's not tuned for that bow. I was like, but it's not wildly off,
Yeah.
So I was like, shoot, man, I'm going to go outside and shoot it and like put a little distance on it just because I want to see this thing shoot. You know what I mean? So even with untuned arrows, I was more consistent and more accurate with the new bow than I was with tuned arrows with the previous one.
No, that's great.
You know what I mean?
It's one of
Which
those
was just
things
crazy.
where you get what you pay for almost,
Yeah. So I'm super stoked.
You've been waiting for that for a long time, man.
Yeah. And
Long time.
The funny thing was like, it sounds weird, but it was almost like a little bit of a confidence boost, to where I was like, I still questioned whether or not I could really use a longbow. Like, and I didn't take it out this year because I was hesitant, and this bow, because I feel just like a little bit that I shot it today, I feel like I could control this one better. Like, I feel like it does what I want it to do, and so, because I even stepped back to like 21 yards, and that was kind of like starting to get to my max with the previous longbow I was shooting. And when I got to 21 yards, I'd have to start shooting like point on, like at that distance. And then it became a little bit the Wild West for me. And I don't like shooting point on. I just like shooting instinctively, And so I stepped back to like 21, 22 yards, whatever it was, and let it rip with this bow. And I could just look at the plate. I just could look at the target where I want to hit the target, and the arrow would go there.
Nice.
So
That's
it wasn't like
awesome.
I had to like do any aiming or anything. And so that just felt really good because I was like, man, if I can shoot this way out to 25 yards, game changer for me.
Yeah.
I was like,
Whitetails.
yeah, I was like, now I feel really good about being in the plains with it and having a deer, not at distance, but like not within 10 yards and being able to be lethal,
Yeah.
So yeah, I got some
it's a
arrow
cool
tinkering
thing,
going.
man. It's a cool thing. We got my buddy Troy out last year, killed his first recurve buck in one of our primary
right.
areas.
Yeah.
And like, that was one of the coolest things. Like, I mean, you saw the video of it.
Yeah.
It's a freaking awesome hunt,
Yeah.
But I remember the feeling that he had. Like, I it was obviously not me shooting the deer, but I could feel it too. Like, just his energy on like, oh, I finally killed my first like trad bow buck, and like,
Yeah.
it was nice. It wasn't a huge deer. It was like 100 and 108-inch 8-pointer, like a nice little respectable 8-point.
Yeah.
But for a trad bow, man, like,
Dude, well, that's the thing. It changes the game, like, for me, as far as, you know, I almost felt like with a compound, it's like I was, I still have fun loving it, enjoying hunting and stuff like that. But there was a part of me where it's like, I don't always have like around me, a like a quote unquote big deer to chase. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to have like a Boone and Crockett deer to chase every year. That's not the point, but just one that like its maturity gets me excited. Yep. Right. I don't won't necessarily have that always every year. For the most part. And so I was like, with a stick and string, I was like, it makes everything a trophy, right? It's like whacking does now becomes a lot of fun with a trad bow. You know what I mean? I was like, and you and I talked about this year where I was like, we're going to go do some doe whacking because I want to get some blood on that thing before I jump in the trailer and take off.
We got a place.
Yes, we do. But anyway, enough of talking about the bow. How does, I know you like did stuff with your dog previously, but like having your dog and like really working with this dog, and that dog's doing a killer job, man, between finding sheds and like retrieving birds and stuff like that, dude, that thing is on point. And I do want to come bird hunt with you. I know you tried to get me out basically all winter and I was busy and couldn't get out.
I'm going to get you out. Don't even worry.
Yeah, we're going to make that happen. We're going to fish too. We're going to fish this summer. I'm going to come fish with you. We're going to do that.
Yeah.
But when like training this new dog and not having an old dog that knows all the tricks already, so to speak, right? Like, how does that help you? Or maybe ask it this way. Does it help you in the woods? Like, do you see things differently whenever you're training a pup in the woods?
Yeah. I mean, I was really, really focused on him. Right. And we hunted a lot of areas that I would not really consider. I mean, we hunted the pheasant turf around me is obviously some of the most pressured stuff because anytime you have pheasant, like you have a lot of guys walking around, right? And the pheasant stuff that's around me, in PA, we're lucky to have a lot of. We have a pretty good stocking program. They put out 250,000 birds. Actually, they just put out an extra almost 10,000 birds last week that were surplus, which is pretty cool. Shout out to PA Game Commission for that, but. This is an area that I'd be like, I might go sit there if I had not a lot of time and just wanted to sit in the woods. But yes, perspective. At some point, I was hunting a lot of the areas that they stock really heavily. And, you got your people. You have a lot of birds there. You got a lot of people and like, I'll take turns in the field. And it's like kind of waiting. And not all the time. I mean, most of the time, if you're out during the week, it's fine. You're not really competing with people, but you can't do that on the weekends. So I was finding these little pockets where maybe there was only 5 or 6 birds, but they were some typical pheasant habitat, but a lot of atypical pheasant habitat where you're kind of like, oh, you're going through this part that's you don't think there's any kind of pheasant in there. And you're like, oh, look at that. What's that rub? What's this rub? And then a pheasant goes up and you're like, son of a gun. But, like there was one part that I got into a couple times this year. I found this little pocket that just had birds in it every time I was in there. And, my dog had his first point in there that was like legit, like, boop. And it was more of a pause point, but he pointed that bird and I shot it and I was like,
that's awesome.
Yes, we did it, But we'll talk about the training a little bit, but talking about the perspective of how you're looking through the woods, like we went through this section that I was like, there's not going to be any birds in here. And I was kind of like, well, maybe there will be, but look at this. Like, here's the access road. I can't get there from this access road. Well, how would I get here? Because the wind is almost always doing this in this area. And I'm like, this is literally the only way these deer are traveling in here. Like you could tell, like it is pretty much the only way they have in and out of here without somebody seeing them. And you're thinking, okay, well, if you access this on a southwest wind, you blow the whole thing out. How are you going to do it? You got to get really, really creative. And I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to I'll tell you offline how we'll get creative on it. But, you really like you start to think of those things real easy because you know what I'm doing when I'm with the dog? I want the wind in his nose all the time, or I
Mm-hmm.
want a crosswind, right? Because different than a flusher, like a flusher can, it's ideal to have wind in their favor, but they're just, you're casting them out and they're moving right, they're shark finning, moving right to left across a field or whatever terrain, whatever stuff you're working, cover you're working, and they're taking like immediate scent and putting a bird up. If not from movement, maybe they pick it up scent and stuff like that. My
Mm-hmm.
lab was a great dog. She was a great bird dog. Just the pointing game for me has been very, very different. It is not the same. Obedience stuff is the same, training a dog like that. But I am constantly throwing something in the air. With a dog, you can do the puff thing or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
it's helpful. Milkweed, leaves, whatever you got, dust, throw it in the air, whatever you got. And I'm constantly thinking about wind directions in areas that I'm hunting because I want the wind in favor of my dog all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because and better a crosswind because then you don't have a dog that's a brand new dog blowing out a bird that's 100 yards away from you.
Right.
You don't want that dog running straight up to that bird. So you're always working at a crosswind and being really conscious of the changes. Like if you think that you're walking north the entire time and you're walking straight north, you're not. You're taking slight bends east, west, and even if it's only a little bit, that makes a difference with how that wind is blowing over whatever you're at. If
Mm-hmm.
you take a slight bend to the west and you think you're still going completely north, you're not. And that makes a huge difference in the way your scent cone is blowing and how, for a dog, how that scent cone is blowing to the dog.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of like two fields that I really enjoyed hunting this year. Once I went around a fence row, if I thought the wind was in my face, it was almost the complete opposite direction just around the end of a fence row. Not because it was blowing off terrain, it's because I turned.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't really notice that turn because you think the road is straight. Well, it is
Mm-hmm.
straight, but it kind of just goes just a little.
You
a
feel
little
like
to
you're
the left.
walking straight, but if you're constantly kind of veering to your left or your west or whatever,
Yes.
right? And it's like, no, now all of a sudden you're northwest.
Yeah, it's
You know what
like
I mean?
it's like when they say you're on I-95 and you're going southbound, you're not really going southbound, right? You're
Right.
like southwest,
Right.
whatever that happens to be. So you got to keep that in perspective. And hunting with a dog like that, you're really thinking about the wind directions. Almost not as much sign. Like, of course, we're walking through areas and you're like, oh, like this
Right.
is
Like
tore up.
I think that when people think about hunting with dogs, because I know Tony talks about this a lot, right? Like that's one of the things. I mean, he loves hunting with dogs, but
Yeah.
that's one of the unintended consequences or unintended benefits is that he sees a lot of country where there's great deer habitat and great deer hunting opportunity because his dog drug him through it.
Yeah. You're hunting a deer like a rabbit almost.
Right. And which is great. And I think that's the part that people can pick up and they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like you're going to go hunt these brushy areas with thick cover that are going to hold, pheasants, or they're going to hold woodcock, or they're going to hold rabbits, or whatever it happens to be that you're trying to flush, right? Or trying to jump. But I don't think the people, and like, I didn't think about it until you said it, because my limited knowledge of birds and dogs that hunt birds, it's like I would just think more about flushing. You know what I mean? Where it's like, and like when you said shark fin, I'm like, yeah, like dogs I've worked with, like that's what they've done. They've gone back and forth, and like they kick up a bird, and boom, there we go. We're off, and we're shooting, or a rabbit, or whatever it is. I used to hunt rabbits with dogs when I was growing up. But I didn't really think much about like the wind. I mean, I always knew the wind component of it was a part of it, right? But thinking of it to that degree didn't really dawn on me. I was like, and that's really interesting, because it really kind of gives you a sense of, because that dog is dependent on you of setting up the wind correctly for them, right? It really gives you a good sense of how much I mean, I know that deer smell better than a dog, right? But that's just a good litmus test. It's like how far off wind is too far off for the dog.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so how much off the wind do I need to be to cut it to where it's like the deer still has it, but I'm off of it enough.
Yeah.
Right. And that's got to be an interesting visual that you get to see.
Yeah. Well, it's also something that you're like, even my little dog, we were hunting in October or whatever, and he is whatever he was, 8 months old or whatever at the time, 9 months old. Uh, like think about it this way too. He's teaching me something too, because if the wind direction isn't right for him, he's making it right for him.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If I'm hunting with the wind, like he's got to turn around to smell the bird,
Mm-hmm.
that's different. But if I'm hunting a crosswind and it shifts where it's like starting to go behind us, he wants to automatically put it back cross. So then I'm like, well, what just happened? Like, what did we move? Like, and you throw something up and you're like, oh, I see what he's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you learn a little something from your dog, although you're trying your best to make sure that, okay, we're going to go over this field because it makes sense for the wind to go this way. Great. But your dog is also, trusting a little bit. I mean, he's a young dog to trust, but still trusting a little bit. Like, I can't smell the way the wind is coming, but he can,
Mm-hmm.
And it's seeing him put those pieces together, because his nose is it's really getting good now. But in the beginning of that first couple birds that he smells, no clue, right? Like, oh, and it's just like running around. Now he's still, just like a flusher, he still works back and forth because he's trying to pick up those little intricacies of the wind in the field, or try to, you're working a big field, you got a scent cone, he's trying to catch different pieces of that scent cone, and he knows I'm hunting with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Initially they go out. I mean, pointers they can go out far sometimes in range, but like they want to run real far and just bounce all over the place. And eventually they're like, oh, he needs me to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to find this in his scent cone in a place where he can see me, so that he can, when I get there and I smell a bird, I'm going to stop. And then he's going to get close enough that I can get that bird. Mm-hmm. So he knows, the first couple, I don't mind if my dog flushes a bird. I try not. Initially, I shot them to like try to build his drive and like, get really excited about a bird. There's lots of theories on that. I am of the school that thinks like anything you can get a young dog excited about hunting, you should probably do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's problematic if the dog catches the bird without you shooting it.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, I think you should just have fun and kill the bird, unless you're like, need a really stringent dog for a competition or something of that nature. But even then, building this drive is really important. But eventually, like, if you have the opportunity, I got out one day. Everybody hates people that chase the stocking truck. I happened to be out one day 3 or 4 hours after they stocked, right? And it was raining out. So there was nobody hunting because nobody wanted to hunt. It was real windy and it was raining and stuff. Like, not heavy rain, just light, but it was enough to like
Enough
get you
to be
wet.
miserable. Yeah.
Yeah. And there was nobody out, and I was like, well, they probably didn't stock today. And then I like look in a bare field, and there's all these pheasants in this bare field, like shaking their feathers off. Like there was 10 or 15 of them just chilling in a bare field. And I'm like, all right, well, this is going to be interesting. I'm not going to shoot any of these birds, but I'm going to circle downwind and let him catch them. Dude, as soon as I got downwind, he was like, whoop, what's that? And he kind of like started running out that way, like looking around. He couldn't see him because as soon as they saw him, they like ducked down as low as they could to the dirt, and they were I could just see their little white ringnecks hiding in this little stubble grass. It was like 3 inches. And he caught their scent and starts working up this hill to them. And all of a sudden one puts its head up and he's like, oh, you're mine. And he just goes into this, and birds go everywhere, right? There's like 15 birds in there. And I'm like, oh. And he's just like, which one do I? And he's running all over trying to find these birds. And I'm like, okay. So then I happen to see a hen pheasant like right next to me. And I'm like, I want to see if he can point this. So I go down, get back, the wind, and he smells it. And he's like, oh. But he can't pinpoint it. So he's like, because they probably just stocked, the bird flew there. It didn't have any ground scent for him to track or anything. So he's trying to learn his nose and learn like, oh, how's this wind working? And then he sees the bird, and I let him flush that one too, right? Bird goes flying off. I'm like, okay, cool. We walk to the next field, and all of a sudden he's like, dunk. And he's just waiting for me to get there, right? He didn't move a muscle. So when you teach these dogs that, hey, I need you to not chase the birds away, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I need you to smell the bird and pin it down. I need you to make that bird know if you make another move, it needs to fly. But if it just stays still, nothing bad's going to happen to it because you haven't found it yet. So they're in that like locking match, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you got this dog pointing his bird, and you walk up, and the bird goes up, and you're like, holy crap, he did it. I completely missed the bird, you know?
Yeah.
And because you're so excited, because the real trophy for you training this dog is like, he pointed, holy crap.
Right.
You know, and he went on like staunch point the rest of the day. I mean, he pointed 4 birds after that, and I think he ended up busting. You still bust a couple, right? Because he's a young pup. He gets excited. He gets on a ground scent and he overruns or something like that.
Right.
That's just the learning curve. But he ended up pointing 4 birds after that, and I shot my limit. I shot 2 roosters that day. That he just like, bam, and I walk up and flush that bird and just do the, you know.
Nice.
And he does we worked a lot with retrieving, and he is not. A lot of pointers aren't really bred. Retrieving's not really bred into them. You really have to work with them, and I did a pretty good job of that in the backyard. You know, pheasant dummies and wings and stuff like that. Like, oh, get excited, and he retrieves like a pro. Like every bird I've shot over him this year, he's picked it up and brought it back.
Nice.
So that was really cool too, because it's you don't often get that, especially out of a first year.
Mm-hmm.
So going from then to now. You know, I'm taking him out shed hunting, and he's a horrible shed hunter. You know, he loves to pick him up.
Sounds like my partner.
Yeah. He loves to pick them up, but he can't find them. Right? I gotta be like, there's a shed. Now it's getting better as it goes along. Like before, it's like you literally saw some of my to Rue Reels and check out his stuff. Put some freaking Looney Tunes things because he's running over top of the shed and can't find it, right? And I have to be like, it's right here, buddy. And then after a while, you're like, go find a shed, and he looks at your hand signal. And he's like, okay, and he runs out that direction and runs into it. Mm-hmm. Now he's like, oh, he's serious. Like if I go the way he wants me to go, there's a good chance I'm going to find something. Right. So he's starting to get a little bit better with it. Sheds are hard for dogs, you know. The scent. First of all, it's not natural. It's a bone. Like it's already dead. They don't have any fun with it. And there's very little scent, especially if it's been laying there for a few days. So
it's more a visual. I was talking to Tony about that because like he was like, you know, the biggest mistake people make when they try to train their dogs to shed hunt is that there's a component of it where you're putting stuff in the backyard and stuff like that. And he's like, but you really want to like make sure you're wearing like clean gloves or latex gloves or something like that, because the dog will start to smell you. And that's what Rocky was doing, because he was fine. Like I was hiding them and he was finding them, but I was like, man, he's working the wind, you know what I mean? Cause I could feel which way the wind was blowing. I'm like, oh, he's trying to cut the wind. And like he would, what I assumed was like smell the bone at first. And then I realized, no, he smells my hand scent on the antler that I placed. 100%. You know, and so then I started trying to get him to just like put it somewhere and then point in the direction and let him visually see the shape. You know what I mean? That way, and that's kind of what Tony told me to do. He was like, start training him on the shape of it and not your scent. So like, he's like, don't hide it from him. Put it somewhere where he can see it, so he doesn't even use his nose. Yeah, so
it is. I think it is a better. I think there's no problem with like, you know, ozoning or like. Some like Doken makes like a rack wash where you can wash the antlers and like like soda, put in baking soda and wash them with that or something. Something break the scent up, and you know put rack wax on them or something. Dog bone hunter makes a really good rack scent that it's helpful, right? Like you want to train your dog on all aspects of it, but the shape is definitely a thing, because what are you doing? You're not using your dog to find sheds to find like
to 400
of them. Yeah. You're using them to supplement what you're already finding. And the easiest way to do that is by the shape. Like if they're running by some that you can't see, it's easier they're going to find them more times.
Yeah. And if he supplements what I'm finding, that means we'll find one collectively.
Yeah, it's going to be perfect.
Nice.
You did find that one that you were training him with, though.
I did. Yeah.
You did.
Yeah.
We were both standing right next to it.
Yeah.
Remember that?
He needed
that was
help,
our first time out together.
Yeah, he found that one, which was cool. But and truthfully, it's like he hasn't been back out much since. Well, not since that specifically, but he's not been out much. Just in general, for just busy, and a lot of the trips I've had to make were like just quick, kind of last year at least, were like quick in and out type of missions. Where I didn't have a lot of time to like shed hunt. It was more scouting and trying to figure stuff out. But this year the plan is to get him out. He's getting older too, man. He's like 7 now, So it's like I could tell like 2 years ago. Actually, no, it was last year. Like was the first year where, we got maybe 5 miles into a scouting session and he's like already walking behind me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, oh man, buddy, like you're getting older. Like you just, there's 10. Well, cause I do 5 miles, he'll do 10. Right. Cause like the first like 2 hours of it, he's just like running all over the place. Right.
Yeah.
And then after that, he just following me because he's tired,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know that. I think the other benefit to a bird dog too, though, is if you're out shed hunting, like there's going to be woodcock that are coming back in soon. They're a migratory bird. I'm excited to get. I bring a blank gun with me, so if he goes on point, he gets the recognition. Like, hey, you went on point. You get a blank shot for that. That was what I wanted you to do.
Right.
And like the other day, he's been getting. Brittany, he's a French Brittany. There's an American and French. The French are a little smaller, a little more compact. But he has been, they say they take about 2 years to really develop their point, right? Mm-hmm. But I spent a lot of time with him and he knows what I want, most of the time. He's still learning, really, really still learning. But man, the last 3 times I've been out shed hunting, he has gone on the most solid points I've ever seen him be on, right? And the other day, my friend and I are about 8 yards apart, right? And he comes ripping up between us and just like solid, staunch, like just, it's in here. And he's looking at it. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, there's like a little stick, like little brushy stuff on the ground. And I'm like, there's nothing there, dude. Like there's like, I'm looking at it like, and I see where he's looking and he's just, and he couldn't see it either. I know he couldn't see it because his nose was, doing this thing.
Right.
And I'm like, man, I was like, Jared, go kick that little bush. And he walks over there and he just like kicks that thing and a rabbit just comes ripping out like, and I'm like, holy crap. Like almost like bare nothing. And the dog is there on point on something I couldn't see. He couldn't see, but he's like, so it's getting really, really cool because he's going on point a lot now like that where I can't even, I'll be like, okay, Rue, go get it because I can't see it. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, not moving until you go over there. And you'll go over there and kick it around and eventually you'll be like, no, dude, it's right here. But it's pretty awesome. Cool.
Yeah, I need to get out with you guys, man. I love watching a dog work. We need to make that happen.
So fun.
We'll do a little scouting on top of it. So
a little scouting, a little fishing. Yeah. The ice is still thick. We were ice fishing this past weekend.
Nice.
But it should be ice out soon and things warming up a little bit.
Then on the boat.
On the boat.
That's right.
You gotta come for the boat.
All right. I'll be up for the boat. I'll bring the bow. We'll do some shooting.
Perfect.
And hanging out.
Get up in some trees.
But man,
I have to come see the new doe spot too.
Well, yeah. We definitely got to do that. So I got to make it up here at some point. We'll make it happen. We'll schedule that. But man, I've kept you here like an hour and a half. I know you jumped on here right after you got out of work, so I want to be sensitive to your time. But and let you get going. But before you get out of here, let people know where they can follow along with you, hunting stuff, ruse stuff, all the shenanigans that you have going on.
Yeah, check me out on Instagram. It's Aaron_Hepler. I'm on Facebook too. There's a couple of the AHEPs on there, so I don't try to find me through Instagram. But you can find me at truthfromthestand.com. There's some stuff on there. Exodus's blog is still up and running, so there's some articles there that you can read, and there's a few things to read from Meat Eater, so you can check that out. And maybe a few things down the pike here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, awesome, man. We'll talk about that whenever when that time comes. We'll let the
We'll let the folks know.
we'll let the folks know. But awesome, buddy. It's always good seeing you, man. It's been too long. We need to get together soon, so we'll remedy that and then tell the fam I said hey.
I shall, buddy. You too.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tacticam, Osseo Gear, Hawk Optics, Tethered, Face Off E-Bikes, and Lathrop & Sons Boot Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.